The Galactic Senate chamber was exactly what you'd expect from a civilization that considered itself the pinnacle of evolution, all sleek curves, floating platforms, and holographic displays that probably cost more than Earth's entire defense budget. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez stood at the central podium, trying not to roll her eyes as Vertal, the Zarkak's representative, adjusted his ceremonial cape for the 5th time in as many minutes. And now, announced the council speaker, their translator barely keeping up with their clicking mandibles, we shall hear Earth's petition to join the Galactic Defense Force. Elena straightened her uniform and cleared her throat. Distinguished delegates, I present to you humanity's military capabilities and our readiness to serve alongside your forces. The holoscreen behind her flickered to life, showing footage of Earth's latest military exercises, Marines rappelling from helicopters, tanks maneuvering through difficult terrain, and soldiers engaging in urban combat training. A ripple of what could only be described as alien snickering spread through the chamber. Vertal's facial tentacles quivered with barely contained mirth. Ambassador Rodriguez, he said, his translated voice dripping with condescension, surely you jest. These are projectile weapons, mechanical ground vehicles? Why, my species abandoned such primitive tools during our Stone Age. Elena's jaw tightened, but she maintained her diplomatic smile. While our technology may differ from yours, humanity's strength lies in our adaptability and tactical innovation. Tactical innovation. Vertal's secondary eyes blinked in rapid succession, the Zarkak's equivalent of rolling their eyes. Your species still relies on chemical propellants and physical armor. We have energy shields that can stop a small meteor. The chamber erupted in chittering laughter. A Marok's delegate in the upper tier actually fell off their floating platform. They were laughing so hard. Elena waited for the commotion to die down. With all due respect, Ambassador Vertal, sometimes the oldest solutions are the most reliable. Humanity has fought countless wars throughout our history. We've learned that victory often depends less on technology and more on the warriors wielding it. Charming philosophy, Vertal replied, his tentacles now writhing with amusement. Perhaps we should also abandon our faster-than-light drives and return to sailing ships. Or laughter. Elena noticed only the Krith delegate remained silent, their ancient eyes studying the military footage with unusual intensity. Motion denied, the council speaker announced. Earth's military forces are deemed insufficient for Galactic Defense Force integration at this time. As Elena gathered her materials, Vertal floated past her platform. Do not take it personally, Ambassador. Perhaps in a few centuries, when your species has properly evolved. Thank you for your consideration, Elena replied smoothly. But as she watched the smug ambassador glide away, she couldn't shake the feeling that they'd all learn soon enough just how wrong they were about humanity's capabilities. In the upper viewing gallery, the Krith delegate made a subtle gesture to their aide. Mark this day, they whispered. The others laugh, but they do not see. These humans, they have the eyes of warriors. And I fear we will need warriors very soon. High Commander Zixtal stood aboard the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, his facial tentacles twitching with barely contained amusement as he reviewed the latest intelligence feeds from Earth. The massive viewscreen displayed various human military exercises, each one seemingly more primitive than the last. Look at them, he gestured to his advisory council, all gathered around the tactical display. They're still practicing with ballistic weapons and physical armor. It's like watching children play with sticks and rocks. Science Officer Kelvara adjusted her sensor arrays. Their largest vessels don't even have basic gravitational shielding. They rely on something called nuclear propulsion. She pronounced the word as if it left a bad taste in her mouth. The footage shifted to show human soldiers conducting urban warfare drills. They were leaping between buildings, using ropes and mechanical devices instead of anti-gravity units. Fascinating, military analyst Rax nor commented, his scales shifting to a shade of amused purple. They compensate for their technological inadequacies with remarkably complex physical training. Although I fail to see how jumping around like primitive primates could ever be effective in modern combat. Zixtal was about to make another witty observation when the ship's emergency beacon flared to life. The holographic display shifted, showing a distress signal from the outer colonies. Sir Communications Officer Yen Trix's voice trembled. We're receiving multiple distress calls from the Proxima sector. It's the swarm. The atmosphere on the bridge transformed instantly. The swarm, a name that struck fear even into the hearts of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. A hive mind species that consumed everything in its path, adapting and evolving with terrifying speed. "Show me," Zixtal ordered, his earlier amusement forgotten. The tactical display lit up with dozens of red indicators. Swarm ships, massive organic vessels that looked more like space-borne insects than spacecraft, were tearing through the outer colony defenses as if they were made of paper. "Impossible racks," Nor exclaimed. "Those colonies are protected by our latest shield technology. Nothing should be able to penetrate them so easily." They watched in horror as the swarm deployed what appeared to be some new form of biological weapon. It bypassed their energy shields completely, as if they weren't even there. "They've evolved again," Kelvara whispered. "They've adapted to our defensive systems." Over the next 6 hours, they received reports of colony after colony falling. The Zarkax fleet, pride of the galaxy with their energy weapons and impenetrable shields, found themselves helpless against this new threat. Their advanced targeting systems couldn't lock onto the rapidly evolving swarm ships. Their shields were useless against the biological weapons. Even their most powerful energy cannons seemed to do minimal damage. "Emergency transmission from the Galactic Defense Council," Yen Trix announced. "They're convening an immediate session." The council chamber materialized in their holographic communicator. Gone was the earlier atmosphere of smug superiority. Fear was evident on every alien face, those that had faces, anyway. "The swarm has evolved beyond our current defensive capabilities," the council speaker announced grimly. "We need new strategies, new approaches, something they haven't adapted to yet." That's when Ambassador Rodriguez stepped forward again. The human's expression was carefully neutral, but there was something in her eyes that made Zixtal uncomfortable. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "it's time to consider some more primitive approaches." Ridiculous, Vertal began, but was cut off by another emergency signal. The swarm had just taken another colony. This one had been protected by the latest Zarkax military technology. It had fallen in less than an hour. Zixtal felt his secondary heart skip a beat as he studied the human ambassador. Their so-called primitive weapons, their unpredictable tactics, their inexplicable tendency to train for physical combat in an age of energy weapons. The swarm had evolved to counter every advanced technology in the galaxy. But how would they handle something they'd never encountered before? Something so primitive it was almost sophisticated. "We're receiving a priority alert from New Darwin Colony," Yen Trix announced, her voice shaking. "They report massive swarm formations approaching their system." New Darwin, the closest colony to Earth space. If it fell. Zixtal looked at the human military footage still playing in one corner of their tactical display. Those primitive warriors, training with their primitive weapons, using their primitive tactics. For the first time in his distinguished military career, High Commander Zixtal found himself wondering if perhaps they had been wrong about what constituted advanced warfare. Lieutenant James Chen stood in the briefing room of the USS Normandy, studying the holographic display of New Darwin Colony. Outside the viewports, Earth's first interstellar carrier group was preparing for FTL jump. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife, but that didn't stop Marcus Williams from trying to lighten the mood. "So," Marcus said, checking the detonator sequences on his tablet, "anyone else think it's funny we're bringing explosives to fight space bugs? I mean, who knows, maybe they're just misunderstood and want to talk about their feelings." Anna Volkova didn't look up from where she was methodically cleaning her Barrett XM500. Last transmission from New Darwin showed swarm eating through reinforced bunkers. "They don't want to talk." Always the optimist, Anna. Marcus grinned, patting one of his many explosive charges. "Well, if they don't want to talk, I've got plenty of boom-boom translation devices right here." Raj Patel looked up from his workbench, surrounded by a mess of colony mining equipment he was modifying. "You know what's actually funny? These advanced aliens with their energy weapons and force fields, they're losing to bugs. Meanwhile, we're bringing gunpowder and steel, old school." "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways," Chen said, zooming in on the colony's industrial sector. The swarm adapted to energy weapons. Let's see how they handle something they've never seen before. Maria Hernandez walked in, her medical kit bristling with both traditional and alien medical tech. Just finished integrating the Zarcax healing mattresses with our field medicine kits. Though personally I'll stick to good old-fashioned biofoam and sutures. Less likely to malfunction when you need them most. Listen up, people. Chen expanded the tactical display. New Darwin is humanity's first extrasolar colony, population 50,000, currently under siege by approximately 100,000 swarm units. The Zarcax fleet is in full retreat, their fancy weapons barely making a dent. That's because they fight like machines, Anna said quietly, her voice carrying years of combat experience. Predictable, programmed. The swarm learned their patterns. Exactly. Chen pointed to key locations around the colony, which is why we're going to do what humans do best, be completely unpredictable. Raj, what have you got for us? The engineer held up what looked like a mining charge with extra parts grafted on. Modified sonic drilling charges. If my calculations are right, they should play hell with the swarm's biological communication systems. Plus, they'll make a really big boom. Music to my ears, Marcus chimed in. Speaking of which, I've got some special surprises cooked up. You know how ants hate certain frequencies? Well, let's just say these space bugs are going to hate my mixtape. Anna, you'll set up here. Chen highlighted a massive atmosphere processor tower. 3 kilometers high, perfect sight lines to the whole colony. I want you to focus on anything that looks like a command unit. The sniper nodded once. They'll never see it coming. No energy signature to detect. Just good old-fashioned copper and lead. Doc, you're with Raj. Keep him alive while he rigs the colony's infrastructure. And people. Chen's expression turned serious. The aliens think we're primitive. Good. That's our advantage. They've never seen humans fight. They don't know what we're capable of. The swarm has adapted to energy weapons and force fields, but let's see how they handle some good old-fashioned human ingenuity. Not to mention high explosives, Marcus added cheerfully. A warning klaxon sounded throughout the ship. All personnel, prepare for FTL jump, the ship's AI announced. Combat drop in T-20 minutes. Chen looked at his team, the demolitions expert with too many explosives and not enough fear, the silent sniper who could hit a target most scopes couldn't even see, the engineer who saw a weapon in every tool, and the combat medic who'd probably seen worse. They were humanity's best, even if the aliens thought they were primitives playing at war. Remember, he said as they gathered their gear, the aliens are watching. Let's show them how primitives fight. Oh, we'll give them a show all right, Marcus grinned, hefting his pack full of explosives. It's going to be one hell of a fireworks display. The USS Normandy's engines flared, and humanity's first interstellar combat mission began. The aliens were about to learn that sometimes the old ways were the deadliest ways of all. Drop pods, locked and loaded, the ship's AI announced. Atmospheric entry in 3, 2, 1. The pod's interior turned blood red as warning lights flashed. Lieutenant Chen felt the familiar gut punch of acceleration as his pod rocketed toward New Darwin's surface. Through the small viewport, he could see dozens of other pods, each carrying a member of the 1st Interstellar Marine Division, streaking through the atmosphere like angry meteors. Now this, Marcus's voice crackled over the comm, is what I call a proper entrance. Hey aliens watching this, this is how humans knock on the door. Aboard the Eternal Dawn, High Commander Zixtal watched in horror. They're using ballistic entry pods. Without shields, the heat will vaporize them. Those madmen are actually doing it, Vertal whispered, his tentacles writhing in disbelief. The pods hit terminal velocity. Chen's teeth rattled as his pod cut through the atmosphere, the ablative heat shield doing its job. Squad, sound off. Boom boom, ready to party. Anna, in position. Raj here, still alive. Doc, wondering why I signed up for this. The ground rushed up to meet them. At the last possible moment, retro thrusters fired, and the pods slammed into various positions around the colony. The impacts sent shockwaves through the ground that actually disrupted several approaching swarm units. Chen's pod door blew open with an explosive charge. He rolled out, rifle up, scanning. The colony's massive atmosphere processors loomed overhead, their shadows cutting through the alien sunlight. Around him, other Marines were emerging from their pods, taking up defensive positions. First contact, 9 o'clock. Raji's voice cut through the comm. A wave of swarm creatures, each the size of a small car, was skittering toward their position. Their chitinous armor gleamed with an iridescent sheen that seemed to shift and adapt to their surroundings. Energy weapons having no effect, a Marine shouted. Then let's try something older, Chen ordered. Conventional weapons free. Show these bugs what powder and lead can do. The sound of gunfire, actual, chemical-propelled gunfire, echoed through the colony streets. The swarm, adapted to energy weapons, had no defense against the kinetic impact of good old-fashioned bullets. Their adaptive armor, designed to disperse energy blasts, cracked and shattered under the barrage. Would you look at that? Marcus laughed over the comm. Turns out bug armor isn't rated for supersonic lead poisoning. From her perch atop the atmosphere processor, Anna's Barrett spoke with thunderous authority. Each shot found a larger swarm creature that appeared to be directing the others, confirming direct effect on command units. They have no concept of taking cover from ballistic weapons. On the eternal dawn, the alien commanders watched in stunned silence as the primitive humans began pushing back the swarm. Raj, status on those defensive positions, Chen called out as he directed his squad through the colony's main thoroughfare. Better than expected, LT. The mining equipment's sonar pulses are driving them crazy. They've never encountered these frequencies before. And wait till you see what I did with the sewage treatment plant. Doc, casualties. Minimal, Maria reported. Their weapons are optimized for penetrating energy shields. Against good old-fashioned ceramic plate armor? Not so great. Chen's squad reached their first objective, the colony's central market square. Perfect fortification position, with clear lines of fire down multiple streets. Dig in here. Marcus, give us some breathing room. Time to introduce the bugs to some percussion therapy. Marcus deployed what looked like modified mining charges around the perimeter. When they detonated, the sonic blast sent swarm creatures flying, their biological communication systems overloaded by the unfamiliar frequencies. Lieutenant Anna's calm voice cut through the chaos. You'll want to see this. Large swarm formation approaching from the east. But there, hesitating, they keep changing their approach vector. I don't think they know how to counter an enemy they can't predict. Chen grinned as he watched the swarm's obvious confusion. Welcome to Earth tactics, bugs. We're just getting started. Above the battle, aboard their flagship, the alien commanders were beginning to realize that perhaps they had seriously underestimated what primitive really meant. The streets of New Darwin had become a war zone like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Lieutenant Chen's squad moved through the urban terrain with practiced precision, using techniques perfected in centuries of human warfare. The swarm, for all its biological superiority, had no answer for good old-fashioned urban combat. Contact, multiple hostiles, using the maintenance tunnels, a Marine shouted. Just like roaches back home, Marcus quipped, pulling out what looked like a jury-rigged collection of mining equipment. Good thing I brought pest control. The improvised explosive sailed into the tunnel entrance. When it detonated, it released both a devastating blast and a specific frequency that scrambled the swarm's hive mind communication. The confused creatures scattered, breaking formation. Score 1 for primitive chemical explosives, Marcus called out cheerfully. No fancy energy signature to adapt to. Above them, Anna's rifle cracked again. Through her scope, she'd spotted a larger swarm creature coordinating the attacks. The massive round traveled 3 kilometers, accounting for wind, gravity, and atmospheric density before finding its mark. The creature's supposedly superior armor might as well have been paper against the hypervelocity tungsten core. How is she making those shots? Vertal demanded from the observation deck. Their weapons have no targeting AI, no energy guidance systems. Skills, Anna responded simply over the open channel, chambering another round. No computer required. Raja had turned the colony's industrial sector into a death trap for the swarm. Mining drills repurposed into sonic weapons screamed at frequencies that drove the creatures mad. Maintenance robots now carried improvised flamers because, as it turned out, Even space bugs didn't like fire. "Hey LT," Raj called over the comm. "Remember those atmospheric processors they used to make the air breathable?" A manic glee crept into his voice. "Watch this." He triggered a command sequence, and suddenly the massive processors reversed flow. The pressure change sent swarm flyers tumbling from the sky, their biological flight systems unable to compensate for the radical air pressure shifts. "Impossible," the alien observers sputtered. "He reprogrammed our atmospheric control systems with a handheld tablet." "No," Raj replied, not bothering to hide his satisfaction. "I just pulled out the control circuits and rewired them manually. Sometimes the analog solution is the best solution." The battle moved to the residential district. The swarm, used to straightforward military targets, found themselves confounded by the maze of apartments and shopping centers. Every window could hide a sniper. Every alley could conceal an explosive trap. The humans weren't fighting like a modern army, they were fighting like their ancestors had fought in cities for thousands of years. "They're adapting to our tactics," Chen observed, watching the swarm's movement patterns change. "Then we'll adapt faster," Marcus replied. He pulled out another modified mining charge. "Hey Raj, remember that thing we talked about? With the sewage treatment chemicals?" "Oh no," Maria groaned. "Please tell me you're not about to." The explosion released a cloud of repurposed waste treatment chemicals. The swarm creatures caught in it began to convulse as their external membranes dissolved. "That's disgusting," Anna commented from her perch. "That's innovation," Marcus countered proudly. The aliens watched in a mixture of horror and fascination as the humans employed one primitive solution after another. No energy weapons, no force fields, no advanced targeting systems, just improvised explosives, ballistic weapons, and an endless supply of unorthodox tactics. Lieutenant Anna's voice cut through the chaos. "I've identified a pattern. The larger command units, they're coordinating through some kind of biological signal. Very low frequency, almost like whale song," Raj interrupted. "The mining sensors are picking it up. If we could disrupt it." Chen smiled. "Marcus, how much boom do you have left?" "Enough to make this party really interesting, sir." "Raj, can you modify the atmospheric processors to amplify a specific frequency?" "Give me 5 minutes and some duct tape." The alien commanders looked at each other in confusion. What are they planning? Their primitive technology couldn't possibly. They never finished the thought. The atmosphere processors suddenly roared to life, broadcasting a frequency that matched the swarm's communication signal but amplified 1,000 times. The effect was devastating. Swarm creatures stumbled, their coordination shattered. "Now this," Marcus said, setting up his largest charges, "is what I call a symphony of destruction." The battle for New Darwin was far from over, but for the first time since the swarm appeared, they were the ones being driven back by an enemy they couldn't predict or adapt to. "Everyone, get clear," Marcus bellowed as he activated the makeshift sonic resonator. The device, cobbled together from mining sonic drills and atmospheric sampling equipment, emitted a pulse that made even the humans' teeth rattle. The swarm creatures nearest to the blast simply fell apart, their molecular bonds shattered by the precise frequency. "Hot damn," Marcus whistled, watching the devastation. "Raj, your frequency calculations were spot on." In the colony's underground maintenance tunnels, Chen led a strike team through the darkness. Their night vision goggles' simple light amplification, no fancy alien tech, gave them a perfect view of the swarm units trying to flank their positions. "They really don't get it, do they?" Chen muttered, setting up an ambush. "They think because they're stronger and faster, they don't need to worry about basic tactics." The swarm rounded a corner right into their trap. Claymore mines, literally just steel balls and explosives, ripped through their ranks. The surviving creatures charged forward, only to meet Marines wielding combat shotguns. In the confined space, it was brutally effective. Above ground, Raja had achieved something the alien observers couldn't believe possible. He'd managed to hack into the colony's weather control systems using nothing but a tablet and what looked suspiciously like a gaming controller. "Who needs fancy quantum computers?" he grinned, fingers flying over the controls. when you've got good old human ingenuity and a modded PlayStation controller. The weather control towers hummed to life. Suddenly, the clear sky turned dark as Raj forced a pressure differential, creating a localized storm system. Lightning crackled between the towers, the electrical discharge playing havoc with the swarm's biological communication systems. Sir Anna's calm voice reported from her sniper perch, the storms affecting their flight capabilities. They're grounded. That's when things got really interesting. A group of swarm warriors, each nearly 3 meters tall, cornered a Marine squad. The aliens watching from orbit expected a massacre. What they got was a lesson in human hand-to-hand combat. The Marines dropped their rifles and drew combat knives. The Zarkax observers were stunned these primitive humans were willingly engaging the physically superior swarm in close combat. Are they insane? Vertal gasped. The swarm's exoskeleton can withstand energy weapon impacts. The Marine squad sergeant, a compact woman named Rodriguez, moved like water between the swarm's attacks. Her knife found the weak points between their armor plates, joints, and sensory organs that no energy weapon could effectively target. Sometimes she grunted, taking down another creature. You need to get up close and personal. The swarm, for all their biological advantages, had no concept of martial arts. They had never needed it, relying on their natural weapons and armor. But humans? Humans had been finding ways to take down larger, stronger opponents for millennia. Back in the tunnels, Marcus had set up what he called his piece de resistance, a network of sonic charges synchronized to the exact resonant frequency of the swarm's biological communication system. "Hey Raj," he called over the comm. "Remember how you said these tunnels would make excellent acoustic waveguides?" "Oh no," Maria interjected. "Everyone, check your ear protection." The detonation transformed the entire tunnel network into one massive sonic weapon. The effect was devastating. Swarm units throughout the colony suddenly lost coordination, their hive mind connection disrupted by the sonic assault. On the eternal dawn, High Commander Zixtal watched in disbelief as his tactical display showed the swarm forces being systematically destroyed by what his species considered obsolete technology. "Impossible," he muttered. "They're using mining equipment and primitive explosives to defeat an enemy our most advanced weapons couldn't touch." The battle reached its crescendo as Chen's plan came together. Anna's impossible shots took out the command units. Marcus's sonic weapons disrupted their coordination. Raj's weather manipulation grounded their air support. And on the ground, Marines engaged in the kind of close-quarters combat that had been perfected in Earth's countless urban wars. "Status report," Chen called out. "East sector cleared," came one response. "Western approach secure," reported another. Central Plaza held a third, confirmed. The swarm was retreating. Not adapting, not evolving, retreating. They had finally encountered an enemy whose tactics they couldn't predict, whose weapons they couldn't adapt to, and whose sheer stubborn determination matched their own survival instinct. Sir Yen Trix reported to Zixtal, the swarm. "They're pulling back. The humans' primitive weapons and tactics, they actually worked." Zixtal watched as the remaining swarm forces fled New Darwin. These humans, with their chemical explosives, their projectile weapons, their hand-to-hand combat, and their inexplicable ability to turn mining equipment into weapons of war, had accomplished what the galaxy's most advanced military forces could not. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "we need to reconsider our definition of primitive." Queen's signature detected Anna's voice cut through the comm with razor-sharp precision. "Northern industrial sector, inside the main processing plant. She's surrounded by an honor guard unlike anything we've seen so far." Lieutenant Chen studied the tactical display, his mind racing through possibilities. The Swarm Queen, the key to their entire hive mind network, was within reach. But between their position and the target stood hundreds of elite guard units. Sir Raj called in. "I've got an idea. It's crazy, but..." "Those are the only ideas that have worked so far," Chen replied. "Hit me." "The processing plant's thermal regulation system. If we overload it while Marcus's sonic weapons are going off, and Anna times her shot just right." "A perfect storm," Chen finished. Marcus, already moving into position, Lieutenant got something special cooked up for Her Majesty. Let's show her how humans throw a royal reception. The assault began with Raj hacking the plant's systems. Temperatures inside began to fluctuate wildly, causing chaos among the temperature-sensitive swarm units. Meanwhile, Marcus had rigged every remaining sonic charge they had into what he called the galaxy's biggest bug zapper. "Ready on your mark," Marcus reported, an almost maniacal glee in his voice. "This is going to be one hell of a bang." Chen took a deep breath. "All units, execute Operation Checkmate. Anna, you've got one shot at this." The next few minutes were pure chaos. Marine squads launched a coordinated attack from multiple directions, drawing out the guard units. Marcus's sonic network activated, creating a devastating web of destructive frequencies that shattered swarm communication and coordination. Through it all, Anna remained perfectly still atop her perch, her breathing steady as she tracked the Queen through her scope. The shot was seemingly impossible through multiple walls, with atmospheric distortion from the temperature fluctuations, at a target moving erratically. "Send Her Majesty my regards," Anna whispered, and squeezed the trigger. The round pierced through 4 walls, curved slightly in the artificial windstorm Raj had created, and found its mark with surgical precision. The Queen's death scream echoed through both audio and hive-mind frequencies. "Target eliminated," Anna reported calmly, as if she hadn't just made a shot that would become legendary in military history. Now Marcus Chen ordered. The demolitions expert triggered his final surprise charges that turned the entire processing plant into a massive resonance chamber, amplifying the Queen's death scream through the hive-mind network. The effect was devastating. Every remaining swarm unit in the colony collapsed, their connection to the hive mind violently severed. In orbit, the alien commanders watched in stunned silence as the supposedly primitive humans achieved what their advanced civilizations had thought impossible. "Mission accomplished," Chen reported, allowing himself a small smile. "New Darwin is secure." The first human victory against the swarm was complete, achieved not through advanced technology, but through the most human qualities of all: ingenuity, adaptability, and the stubborn refusal to accept impossible odds. "Well," Marcus quipped, surveying their handiwork, "guess those primitive tactics worked out pretty well after all."